me notice if I got to have something prepared.
Well, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Constitution class. Today we are still in, I believe, section one, uh, 3 through 6, going through the uh, legislative procedures. So, if you want to jump ahead about 15 minutes, that's when class is going to start. Other than that, I'm going to leave you here with Brady, aka Warhamster, to chit chat things away for a minute.
Yeah, thanks for nothing, Ron. See you in a bit. Hurry back. It's like the third time he's done this to me. I come on just to have a little chit chat with him beforehand and to entertain you early arrivers. And then I get here and he goes, "Okay, you're on your own with a monologue. I've got nothing prepared. I've been working all day." All right,
I'm here.
all right, good enough. How you doing today,
I
Ron?
just didn't think anybody wanted to see me feed my face. So
No, that's very considerate of you. I am so sick and tired of people talking about balloons.
Exactly.
No, it's like out of nowhere they're going to shoot down everything that goes into airspace. I mean, distraction. It's all it's got. It's just got to be distraction.
Absolutely agree.
And nobody talking about Ohio. I mean,
Nope.
Nothing whatsoever. That's pretty nasty. What's going on there? You're starting to hear from some pretty, I guess, savvy chemical engineers and whatnot.
Well, okay. Can you say what's going on in Ohio, or are we going to get kicked off of YouTube?
No, not at all. A train derailed. They've got video. They got video footage of like 30 miles back. They could see it went by a security camera, and you could see sparks coming out of the wheels on the left side of the train, about midway down. And then it passed. Well, then the people that monitor these things, National Transportation, whatever.
NTSB?
Yeah, they had a hey Chris, hey Kikio. They have sensors that actually, basically are, when the train goes by, they're trying to sense the temperature of the train or the wheels, because it's usually a way you can tell if there's something going wrong. Well, there was one about 20 miles back, and there's one right near where the accident happened, and one or the other didn't give off the signal. So there's a flaw in the detection system. We don't know which one messed up or not at this point. But at the end of the day,
is it a flaw of the detection system, or was it deliberately turned off?
I don't know if it's no idea at this point. It's pretty hard to speculate. No one's really, the only reporter who got close to it got arrested. And then of course the fact that none of the mainstream media will even touch the subject, it tells you there's something really odd going on. And of course, now we get 2 other train derailments nearby or elsewhere in the country over the next few days. Whether those are related whatsoever or not, because they have anything to do with all the food plant sabotage or anything like that, who knows? But as like everything, it's speculation at this point. The interesting part is Pete Buttigieg, Secretary of Transportation, took him 10 days to even talk about the fire and the economic environmental damage that was happening. So they had this. I'm not even going to try to pronounce all the chemicals. Just say bad stuff. They had all these chemicals, in this train, and it was actually somewhat toxic. So what they did is they decided to burn it off so there wouldn't be an explosion. Well, apparently there's a few really nasty chemicals produced when you burn off this original chemical, and now it's getting in the water. Like 2 miles away, they're finding dead fish in the stream. They're telling people it's safe to go home, but you can test your house if you'd like us to. And they've tested about 2/3 of them. And apparently, they're not toxic anymore. But there's everything about this has just been handled awfully. Hasn't been covered correctly. The wrong people have been involved in the decision. The whole decision-making chain was broken, and
You mean just like they told people, the first responders in September 11th, that the air was safe to breathe?
Something along those lines, although they had a little bit more time with this one. It took them several days to get it wrong. Yeah, 9/11, they were, that was a pretty sudden event. This is like 3 days later, they're still making bad decisions.
Well, no, they actually, when they told everybody that the air was safe to breathe, it was days after.
Okay, yeah, okay, I know where you're going with that. Yeah, you're right. My bad. I didn't pick up on what you were saying. Thanks, Raging Smirk. I agree. Pete Buttigieg, his political career is over at this point. I mean, there's no way they're going to be able to cover this one up or anything. All the other travesties under his watch. What do they call it? What they call him? Secretary of Vacation.
Well, I'll keep my comments to myself about Pete Buttigieg.
That's all right. You want me to read your mind and tell you what you're going to say?
I'm sure you probably could.
I'm pretty sure we're going to be in agreement on this one. Ron, you'll find this one interesting.
Huh.
The GOP Federal Trade Commissioner is going to resign because of disagreements with Democratic chair. This would be
What?
Christine, Federal Trade Commission, which has their fingers on the edge of crypto regulation. And now the Republican is resigning from the board because he can't get along with the Democrat. I don't know if that's done on principle or what have you, but that's not a good thing. That's just less oversight.
Well, will they just put somebody else on there?
Or leave it vacant as long as they can. I don't know if I forget if that's one of the ones that has to have a certain 3-2 balance or what have you. But the bottom line is it really doesn't matter. If you want a Republican on there just to obstruct the worst of their ideas. It's not like you can do anything proactive. Donald Trump's out there claiming that the Democrats and big tech orchestrated January 6th cover-up, which we all knew from the Twitter files.
Interesting.
Yeah. Republicans introduce a bill to defund the Wuhan lab after audit shows it refused to hand over documents. That's a good one. Of course, we shouldn't be funding gain-of-function research anywhere. What do you think about the Project Veritas dilemma, or drama, I should say?
I am very suspicious of that.
Which part of it?
Well, I almost think that was a setup by Pfizer.
Entirely possible. So that's where George Webb was going with it.
I think it was a setup by Pfizer to make Project Veritas look bad. And anyway, we'll see. I don't know.
Look at the lumberjack Doug. What's going on?
Well, when it's not snowing or raining, I've been chopping wood. So it's funny you said lumberjack. Also dealing with my well. We still don't have any water yet, so we're living out of 5-gallon jugs. Doing the George Carlin wash. Face pits, asshole.
I don't think I've heard that one. In fact, I might be glad I haven't.
Yeah. For those of you who are watching live or later, I am Douglas V. Gibbs, Mr. Constitution, and I am not in my usual studio office in Southern California where I have all my nice equipment. I am up on the Oregon coast. I have a place up there that my father left to me, passed to me when back in '99 when he passed away, and I come up here a few times a year, and I have a well, and right now I have a leak in the tank. So every time I come up here, it's empty. So I got to fill it up to get me water for the week because I have nothing left over from last time I was here. And I've got a generator because the electrical line has since been messed up. So I walk down there with my 2 gallons of gas and my starter fluid and my oil for the generator to get it all started so I can pump up some water. And since last time we're up here, a tree from the other side of the creek decided to fall right on top of the well, breaking the pipe, the electrical box that connected my pump to the generator. And to get to that stuff, you would probably have at least a few hours worth of chainsaw work. Although that's what it would take me. Someone who really knows what they're doing could probably do it in half an hour. And so no water. Now there's a little bit left in the pipes between the tank and the house, which is enough to wash our hands, flush the toilet, and brush your teeth, stuff like that. But we're not going to be taking any showers. So my wife this morning woke up and she says, "I'm a dirty girl," but she meant because she hadn't had a chance to take a shower. And I am here still to do the show on Valentine's Day. So for Valentine's Day, for those of you watching live, good to see you. My lovely wife and I are up here for Valentine's week because she wanted to spend time with me. All I asked was 1 hour out of our vacation, this hour right now. And last night she was a little bothered by it, but then after today, I went out and got us some fresh crab and some mussels and some smoked salmon and I made some rice and some veggies. And I fed her a meal that was less expensive and better tasting than anything you get in any restaurant down there in California because it was fresh. She's like, "Go do your show. I'm going to watch this movie." I'm content. So here I am. So there's my intro for the day. How you guys doing?
I've been on Zoom calls nonstop for 2 days, just working on business stuff, and I'm exhausted, but doing good.
All right, very good. Mr. Ron?
I'm well. I'm just finishing up stuffing my face. I was gone. Anyway, I had something that I had to do, and anyway, just a little bit late, so I haven't eaten all day, so I'm taking the time to eat off camera, but I'm still here.
Okay. Yeah, made us some bacon and eggs and hash brown and this morning, and then we had our nice lunch. She says, "Well, I can't wait for dinner." And I'm like, "Man, we're gonna leave here, go home fatter than when we got here." Nice thing about everything up here is, it's fresh, woodsy, and all that jazz. But yeah, I exhausted probably all of my firewood except for a day or two's worth of firewood last time I was up here. Because I hadn't been cutting anything, so I got myself a new chainsaw. I got myself a nice table saw that I picked up about a year ago, and I've been chopping and cutting and chopping and cutting, and I'm exhausted, but probably in better shape because of it. I haven't played with a chainsaw in a long time. I used to help back when we first got this place. We used to log almost every year, cut down trees, and sell them to the local mill, make a little money, and I would take that money, and that's how I've maintained the house, is out of its logging money, because I don't have the extra money in my own budget. And my wife used to get all excited because I don't care what the degrees were outside, and when I was younger, I was much more fit than I am now, man. And I'd have I tend to wear button-down shirts. That's what I'm comfortable in. Sometimes I'll wear t-shirts, but I had a button-down shirt that day one day when I was doing some logging. I opened that sucker up, and I came up glistening in sweat, and she's like, "Ooh!" And it was a good evening. But not so sexy anymore. Now it's like, damn, what's that smell? Oh, it's you, But I did a lot of, but we haven't cut down trees in a while. I haven't done any logging in a while. I used to help them to save money because I would do the work of two people and not hire two of the lumberjacks, just so I wouldn't have to spend as much money and get more money into my pocket. So I used to help with the logging, but anyway, so it's fun up here, and we're coming up on the top of the hour. It's 2:59, and so enough talking about. Still, yeah, I'm even early because I'm not trying to get here from a Constitution class of Fallbrook like I usually am. Usually I literally run through the front door, across the house, into my office, flip everything on, and everybody's taking bets as to when I show up. But it's just because I cram I have such a tight schedule during the week. I cram everything I can to get it all done. But hey, I'll just tell you guys one more thing. It's interesting. So I'm teaching for the first time homeschool high schoolers. I'm teaching U.S. history, government, and economics and U.S. Constitution once. It's what I've taught homeschoolers in the past. It's the first time I'm doing U.S. history. And one of my parents got a hold of me because she's concerned. Her son is enrolled in a charter school which receives state money. Therefore, the curriculum that is required in order for him to get credits match what they teach in the public schools. So right now we are in the American Revolution. Basically, my U.S. history teaching is from the discovery of the New World all the way into the present day. Turns out that they are not going to give my kids that are tied into the school system credit because they don't teach that anymore. They start with the Reconstruction period. And so I had a couple parents contact me telling them, well, can't wait till you get to the, past the war between the states, because right now we're not getting any credit. And I'm like, really? They don't want our kids to know the foundation of the system. Just the fact that slavery was bad and the southern states were punished and the civil rights era, and they're all a bunch of racists anyway. I mean, that's pretty much all they're teaching them. It drives me nuts that not only now, they used to barely mention the Constitution and the Founding Fathers. Now they don't at all. They just skip through it and start with the Reconstruction period. And and now they're forcing the charter schools, some private schools, and any homeschooling that's attached to any of the public or school system at all. Like some of these kids are in charters, but they're allowed to take like outside classes to build credit. Well, they don't accept it now. And when they take the homeschool kids, while they're that aren't connected, when they take their tests to get their whatever credits, what I'm teaching them right now won't matter. It won't be tested. So welcome to California. That's a California thing. So found that out.
That's all by design, obviously.
Sure it is. Sure it is.
I mean, that's just straight out of Ministry of Truth. When you control the past, you control the future.
Right. All right. I can't see the chat room. I don't have it up. I probably could if I wanted to, but I'm using my phone and I'm trying to, just do whatever. So guys, if there's questions in the chat, let me know, because I'm not paying attention to it. But all of you chatters, all you live people, all of you people who are watching after the live broadcast, good to see you. I've got a hat on because we're not showering and my hair is, let's just say from our gang, my hair is like alfalfa, but all over. Washed it yesterday in a pan. I have like 3 5-gallon jugs, so we go take down someplace, fill them up, bring it back. So, but I didn't wash my hair today. So hat. Now, real quick, for those of you who may know, recognize that hat? Anybody? What's it from? Anybody know?
No idea.
You don't know? It says NX01 for those of you who can't read it. You don't know what that's from?
No.
Oh, okay. Any Star Trek fans out there? You'll know what NX01 is.
I was gonna say Star Trek. I was gonna say Star Trek.
Okay. Now, which series? Which ship?
Memory Beta. Because I looked it up.
Is it going to be?
It's the Enterprise.
Is it going to be Next Generation?
The very first Enterprise on the show Enterprise that was on the Paramount Network. The very first, where Scott Bakula was the captain, it was the very first Enterprise, according to the canon, in X-01, when humans just began to do warp drives. The very first Enterprise.
So let me be a buzzkill about to you Star Trek fans. If you look at the Star Trek universe, the whole world is united to go out and be the Galactic Federation, who is supposed to be that's the same thing you had in Star Wars. Over this future utopia that these people today, you can't tell them what you ask them, when has socialism ever worked in the past, and they go, forget that, it works in the future. So that's
Matter of fact, if you watch Next Generation, I can't count how many times Jean-Luc Picard would talk about, well, we don't need money. We have grown beyond that. We have evolved to the point where we do things for what is better for humanity.
Well, the point being, if you've got a food replicator, socialism might actually work. But until we get food replicators, we actually have to produce things.
You might be onto something. But I tell you what, whoever created that food replicator is one rich capitalist.
I am absolutely sure that one of Bill Gates' descendants stole that patent.
Oh man, yeah. No, socialist utopia of Star Trek is absolutely incredible. That's exactly what it claims to be, and it's not workable. But that's beside the point.
Well,
All right, guys.
Let's finish up that thought. If you look at most of science fiction, that's where a lot of this utopian garbage comes. And that goes back a century. Ron, let me finish the thought. Then I'd love to hear what you have to say. This goes back to H.G. Wells in the early 1900s. He was writing science fiction.
Yeah, he was a big-time socialist.
And he basically wrote the playbook that they're now using as the Great Reset. That was written in 1902 or 03. The science fiction writers have been a big part of this.
There was one science fiction writer who was not a socialist and wrote basically probably one of the greatest pieces of science fiction, and that was Robert Heinlein with Starship Troopers. And when they made that into a movie, they deliberately took his masterpiece and made it into just an absolute. They mocked it from start to finish.
Heinlein's writings are absolutely, books are absolutely not socialist, and I actually have a number of quotes by him from books that I like to use every once in a while. Stranger from a Strange Land is another one that really takes a good look at the political, whatever. And I'll tell you another person that's definitely not a socialist. If anything, he's been criticized for his stances. The problem is that he borrows the stories from his belief system. I'll tell you what that means in a second. Orson Scott Card. Orson Scott Card, by the way, is Mormon, and so most of his series are based on parts of the Mormon history in the Book of Mormon. So he kind of didn't really, some of these stories, he didn't create them. They are kind of stolen from the Book of Mormon and then turned into science fiction versions of the same story. But Orson Scott Card be another one.
Yeah, one last name we got to throw in there, of course, is C.S. Lewis, because.
We'll see it. Yeah, his is all allegorical, Christian allegory. Well, and you could get J.R.R. Tolkien for that same thing. He was a Christian, and a lot of his, of course, they've taken the fantasy fiction genre and turned it into something almost occultish. But J.R.R. Tolkien also, there's a lot of Christian allegorical schemes and antidotes inside his writings. While there is one person who created the utopian future too, and it wasn't allegorical or a warning like George Orwell's was, but he also put a lot of realistic obstacles and realistic ways that it can have failures, is Isaac Asimov. In fact, Isaac Asimov not only created his own universes and made sure that the problems that are true to socialism emerged, but he even predicted a Trump-style figure, the mule, that stuck a stick in the spokes of everything. But I digress.
No, but I love that comparison of the mule. That was so perfect.
Yeah. Isaac Asimov is actually my favorite writer, but what's funny is when he became my favorite writer, it wasn't because of his science fiction. And I think I've told you guys this before. I was a young man, and I was just learning about U.S. history. I was starting to get into Constitution and that founding period. And one of the books that my aunt bought me a box full of books all about U.S. history and that revolutionary period. And one of my favorite books out of that box was by Isaac Asimov, called "The Kite That Won the Revolution," and it was about Benjamin Franklin. And Asimov was actually quite the patriot. He loved this country. He was an immigrant. He stowed away in his parents' luggage to get here from Russia. They came without him, and then they got here, and he was there in their luggage. He was like 3. So that's how Isaac Asimov came to America, and the guy loved this country. And while as a scientific mind, he did, get into the evolution, all that jazz, and was off center on some things, his way of looking at the political scene was very honest, to put it that way. So, but I would say that of all of them, Heinlein's probably the least libtard of them all, for sure. Heinlein is my second favorite writer behind Isaac Asimov. That said, my favorite books are actually not by my favorite writers. My favorite writers are Isaac Asimov, Robert Heinlein, and Larry Niven. But my favorite books, science fiction books, are Brave New World by Huxley, Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, 1984, and Animal Farm by Orwell, which people find really weird.
You know, Orwell was British intelligence, right?
Mm-hmm.
Orwell,
and he was actually a bit of a socialist himself.
He was, but he was British intelligence, and he saw a bunch of the cables and stuff, and he wrote a fictitious story based on the future that he saw was coming based on the things that he saw.
Yep, very good. All right, for those of you who are looking at, by the way, the scenery behind me, I'm in the game room. And what I have behind me is the bar area. And just real quick little tour, if you don't mind. So got a bunch of books there too, because I'm a book guy. Got my pool table.
Oh, is this your place?
Yeah, it's my place. Yeah, up here in Oregon. Yeah, the pinball machine that needs to be fixed because one of the flippers isn't working right now. All right. I guess you don't have to cover the children's size, but but I've got all kinds of beer posters and stuff like that.
So basically, you got a man cave, but you got to drive.
Yeah, it's a great man cave. But anyway,
you got to drive 10 hours to get there. But
it's 10 hours. I wish. Yeah, no, I took what would I say? We did it this time in like 16, 17, 18 hours, something like that. In my fastest, I can do it in 15 hours. Usually it takes a little over 20. Got to have the dartboard, of course. But anyway, and I've got my TV down there for the games. Got my game system up here because I don't play video games at home. But I do up here sometimes. But I mean, it's Nintendo 64 and the original Nintendo. I don't have all the great new systems. I'm not into that stuff. But yeah, no, it's a great place to kind of go to. I love it up here. 80 acres of just trees, and the town and the beach and the harbor is 5 minutes away. So we go 5 minutes down the road. Went to the fish market, got a couple of crabs. I had to go to a different market for the mussels, but the smoked salmon. I wasn't going to get it, but it was coming out of the smoker as I'm buying my crab, and I'm like watching it just go across behind the counter. I'm like, I want some of those too. And it was like, I two full crabs for like what was it, 24.
Wow, that's cheap. Your
audio just went.
Your audio just dropped, Doug.
Tracy says, "Hey, well, get your audio back, and I'll tell you what Tracy says."
Actually, he froze.
Did he freeze? He just now froze. Well, Tracy, yeah, Doug was taking the week off, sort of. He took Sunday night off of that show that I do with Alan, that we've been being guests on there. He couldn't go all of Monday without calling me, and of course, he had to show up today. I assume he'll get some R&R starting this afternoon after the show, and then the rest of the week. Kikyo has a friend watching today. Very cool. Kikyo's friend, say hello. Introduce yourself. We got some dead air time to fill.
Here, I'll show you.
So the question
I'll show you where Doug is.
Okay, here I am.
So this is so here's Doug on the map right here. So here's the California coast. Here's San Francisco down here, Eureka, and then Doug is.
Can you guys hear me, by the way?
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. What happened is I got a phone call. And Virginia, Chris is coming up to get those parts for the pipe for the water. Okay, but I'm going to be in the game room, so when he comes up, give it. Yeah, I just talked to him on the phone. All right. Yeah. The reason why you guys lost my audio wasn't because of bad signal or anything. It's because of because you give guys a
Cool.
view
Well,
of the house behind me.
let's get to the Constitution. We killed a half an hour.
All right. Well, come on, man. Come on. You got to look at this stuff.
Okay. All right.
Isn't that just awesome or what? But one more view.
All right.
Isn't that awesome? Come on, you gotta love that shit. All right, now I'm going back to the game room and we'll get this started. Now, reason why I lost the audio because the only call I was willing to take, and I had a feeling he was gonna call me, was the guy helping me with my water, my neighbor Chris. The guy can fix anything, and when I told him what happened, he's like, "Oh man, that sucks." He says, "Well, let me take a look at it. I can probably get it fixed for you pretty quick." So I went down and bought. He told me what he needed. I went down and bought the stuff. He told me he just got the electrical part working. Now he's coming up to get the pipe stuff from Virginia that I bought, and so we'll have water tonight. So I get to shower. Woohoo! All right. All right. Now I'm back. But anyway, yeah, now it's paradise, dude. All right. So, hi, everybody. Where we left off was Article 1, Section 5. Article 1, Section 5. This is actually kind of a for some people, it's kind of a tough part of the Constitution to trudge through because it's just kind of basic regulations, rules, things that they do or whatever. But before this is over, within the next 45 minutes, we will get into how the lawmaking process works, and that's how we're going to wrap up the show is with lawmaking, and that is very, very important. So Article 1, Section 5, each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. Now, that's an interesting thing to put in, and here's why. Because it's telling you specifically in the Constitution that each house, it's their job to determine if their people who are getting voted in or got voted in are qualified to take the seat. If they are not qualified, they're not, it turns out that one of the qualifications, 7 years minimum citizen or 9 years a citizen, if the Senate isn't met or something like that, then they won't be seated. They will not seat them. So the founding fathers were smart enough to make sure to put in the Constitution when it comes to the House Representatives and the U.S. Senate that I didn't see your message. Did you just pop one up on me? I saw it pop across the top of my screen. Just tell me, Ron.
No, that's to Ron, not to you.
Okay. All right. So anyway, they were smart enough to say, hey, if someone's not qualified for office, for the House and for the Senate, in the Constitution, we're going to put whose job it is to determine that eligibility for the House or the Senate. Here's something that's fascinating, though. No place in the United States Constitution does it say whose job it is to determine the eligibility of president or vice president. But once again, we know it's not an oversight because they did it for the House and the Senate. It's right here. I just read it. Article 1, Section 5. Each house shall be the judge of the elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members. So obviously, if they knew to put one, they would know to put the other, but they didn't. Why didn't they? Because it was none of the federal government's business. Remember, enumeration doctrine, in order for the federal government or any part of the federal government to have a duty, that is put in the Constitution. If it's not there, they don't have the duty. They don't have the power. They don't have the authority. So if determining the eligibility of the president and vice president is not in the Constitution, then it's no part of the federal government's job to determine if those people are eligible. Now, it's not to say that eligibility is not listed. It's in here, right? President needs to be 35, natural born citizen, things like that. So if there is no part of the federal government listed in the Constitution that is there to determine the eligibility of a president or vice president, then gosh, whose job would it be? Well, it's a funny thing because after they wrote this and it got ratified, the ninth ratification vote happened in 1788. 1787 is when this was written. 1788 it got ratified. 1789 it went operational. 1789 the Bill of Rights 12 amendments was put out there to the states, and by 1791, 10 of them had been ratified, 2 of them not. And of those 10 that got ratified, Amendment 10 says, and for those of you who want to go there with me, go to Amendment 10, the power is not delegated to the United States by a constitution. In other words, it's not in here, because, see, stuff has to be listed in order for them to have the power. So if it's not here, nor prohibited by it to the states, there's nothing in the Constitution that says it's not the state's authority to determine the eligibility, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Now let me read it for context in one shot. The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. So, to determine the eligibility of the president or vice president is none of the federal court's business, none of the executive branch's business, none of the legislature's business at the federal level, which would be Congress. It's up to the states or to the people. Now, the reason why I bring this up, and here's why it's important. Some of you know that I am a party to a lawsuit against Kamala Harris for not being eligible for office. She was born in Oakland, but natural-born citizen is a requirement for both the president and vice president, and being born on American soil does not necessarily always fully satisfy that requirement. The final sentence of the 12th Amendment, by the way, because it used to be running for president, first place got president, second place got vice president, so whoever was going to run for vice president had to be eligible for the presidency because they were running for president in the first place. But now, with the 12th Amendment, they changed it so that there was no longer a first place, second place. It was presidential election and a separate election for the vice president. So to make sure it was understood, that person still needed to be eligible to be president, because, you know, they're one heartbeat away from that office. And the very final clause of the 12th Amendment says that the vice president must meet the same eligibility requirements as the president. So the vice president needs to be a natural-born citizen just like the president. But determining that eligibility is not listed in the Constitution. Therefore, no federal office has the authority to determine that eligibility. Now, we know that in order to be a natural-born citizen, according to the Founding Fathers, and we know this for a fact, both parents need to be citizens at the time of the birth of the child in order to be a natural-born citizen. Natural-born citizen is not the same as citizen. It is a step up. It is a higher citizenship, so to speak. Someone who was naturalized can never be a natural-born citizen. Someone who was just born on American soil, but let's say like my kids, my wife had not become a citizen yet. She had not given the oath. She had not naturalized yet, so she was a permanent resident. I was a citizen, so while my kids are citizens, they're not natural-born citizens. How do I know? And I know this is kind of jumping ahead with the Article 2, but it's important because of what they have here. How do I know what the definition of natural-born citizen is? Vattel's Law of Nations. Vattel's Law of Nations, a legal resource of the time period, which had legal definitions for what we would call today the Western world. Vattel's Law of Nations was on the floor at the Constitutional Convention. Therefore, we know it was important to them. We know that they were following it because it was on the floor. Not only was it on the floor, 3 copies were on the floor. 2 in English, 1 in the original French. The French copy, and for some reason I'm blanking on the years. I think it was, I want to say 1768, I think, for the French version, and 1770, I think, for the English translation. I may be off there, but anyway, so they had 3. They had 2 of the English translations and the original French, and they could all speak and read French anyway. That way, if there was a question over whether or not the translation was accurate, they could go to the original French. And in Vattel's Law of Nations, it gives us the definition for natural-born citizen. So how is it then that we have a vice president of the United States who's not a natural-born citizen, and everybody's arguing she is? Because with something else, which happened in 1803, Marbury versus Madison, which launched judicial review, they have interpreted it to mean just born on American soil. But anyway, the reason why I bring this up is whenever I get to this part in Article 1, Section 5, and because one of the arguments I get with people say, well, maybe they just didn't think to put who would determine the eligibility, and so we have to interpret it. No, they knew. Don't give me that, because they did it for the Senate and the House right here. So to say, oh, but they didn't realize it for president and vice president, I don't think so, because they did it for the two houses of Congress here. So they knew. They chose not to put it in there because they didn't want the federal government to be the ones determining the eligibility for their own executive officers. That's like having the fox guard the hen house, right? They already think they're the auditors of themselves for everything. You're going to let them decide for themselves who's eligible too? No, it was up to the state legislatures and the people. Ultimately, that's what was intended. All right, so sorry I spent a lot of time on this, but it's such a big deal. I am so tired of every time I get into these debates, especially with left-wing nutcases, you say, well, because it's not the Constitution, maybe they just didn't think of it.
So
no, it's not the Constitution because they didn't want the federal government to be a part of it. Yes, go ahead.
Well, we had an announcement today that Nimrata Randhawa was running for president on the Republican. Oh, I'm sorry, Nikki Haley. That was her original name, was Nimrata Randhawa. And
yeah, she's Indian.
Yeah, turns out both of her parents were not U.S. citizens at the time of her birth. So
she's not eligible.
I agree. I just didn't know if everyone was aware of that yet.
Yeah, no, I you texted it earlier. I saw that, and I had not looked into her before, but I'm going to trust you on this one, that you did your research, and we can keep on going. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Bobby Jindal. So, well, what about Trump? His mom was from Scotland. Yeah, but she was originally from Scotland, but she became a citizen before he was born. So he is a natural born citizen. If my wife naturalized in 2007. So if we had a kid right now, that's going to happen, and it can't. But if we did, that kid would be a natural born citizen. But my children that was born before she naturalized, they're not eligible for the presidency. They run for Congress if they want. But they're not eligible for the presidency or vice presidency.
Yeah, a friend of mine said that after Nikki Haley announced, she's actually received 3 texts for fundraisers for Nikki Haley for president already today. So, Nikki's.
And I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of her. I like her more than most of the establishment knuckleheads, but she's got about 1 3/4 of her other foot in the establishment.
Well, that South Carolina GOP is pure poison all the way across at the top.
Well, if she's announcing, and Trump is, anybody who's running right now is running against Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And people.
Well, she might not be running against Trump though. She might be running for vice president.
That's what a lot of people are speculating, and she has not been a very solid backer. I mean, she's been on the wrong side of some of the major issues, and I believe J6 is one of them. Yeah,
she's been on the right side a few times too, so that's why I say she's only got 1 3/4 foot in the establishment. A quarter of let's see. So what am I saying? 1/8 of the time she's okay.
Yeah, I remember one good solid speech she made at the United Nations where I said, "Okay, I can live with her," and then of course it goes back to being a rhino.
Yeah, like 12.5% of the time she's okay. The rest of the time, you got to get rid of her. All right. All right, let's continue. So each house shall be the judge of elections, returns, and qualifications of its own members, and a majority of each shall constitute a quorum to do business. Now, when I do my classes, when I teach my classes, gotta use my language properly here. I may be misunderstood. I don't do my classes; I teach them. But anyway, a majority of each shall constitute a quorum. And I ask, what's a quorum? And 99% of the time, someone will say, well, a majority. No, that's not what the word quorum means. That is what a quorum means here. And that's what a quorum means usually. But the word quorum means the minimum number required to do business. The minimum number required to do business. I remember I was friends with someone who had with his company, a board, and they only needed 20% to have a quorum of the board. Now, I thought that was dangerous as hell. But nonetheless, that was what they decided. A quorum can be 40%, be 51%. It could be, the majority. It could be 60 votes. It could be 3/4 or 2/3. It could be what it is determined to be. And the bylaws of the United States, better known as the United States Constitution, says a quorum is just a majority. But a smaller number may adjourn from day to day. So what it's saying is, while in order to do business you need a majority, a quorum, you can be in session without a quorum. What good is being in session without a quorum, one might ask? Well, first of all, let's establish what that is. So it is possible for a House of Congress, House of Representatives, or the U.S. Senate to be in session without having a majority, and that is called a pro forma session. Pro-forma, pro forma session. Now, why would you want to go into a pro forma session? Well, there's a few reasons. Number one, in order to go into recess for more than 3 days, each house has to get the permission of the other house. So if the House wants to, or if the Senate wants to, and they can't get the permission of the other house, then they can't be on recess. They cannot adjourn for more than 3 days. So first of all. Second of all, a pro forma session comes in really well for the Senate when you don't trust the president. Because, see, the Senate confirms appointments, or nominees to be appointed, should I say. So let's say the president has a nominee for a judge. If you don't have quorum, but you're not out of session, he can't do a recess appointment. Because, see, when the Senate is out of session, when they are on recess, then he can temporarily appoint someone. So you don't trust the president, so what you do is you don't go on recess. You go into pro forma session. You keep a handful of people there, swinging the gavel every day and doing no business other than maybe talking to the walls. Because if you don't have a quorum, you can't do a confirmation hearing for any of his nominations, but he can't do a recess appointment because technically you're still in session. It's a brilliant rule put into the Constitution. The Founding Fathers has checks and balances all over the place in this document, and that's one of them. And to me, it's an incredible rule. It's so good. It makes sure that there can't be any abuse of power, such as with recess appointments, that there's a check by Congress. Then it says, and may be authorized to compel the attendance of absent members in such manner and under such penalties as each house may provide. Gosh, we're suddenly at war and everybody's not coming and we need to declare and war and we can't get the, well, we can compel members. Hey, if you don't get in here so we can make a vote on this, you are going to not be on a committee anymore or something like that. And they can create their own punishment or censure or whatever. So Congress can compel members to be there. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings. All right, so if each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, one such rule, it's not in the Constitution, people always ask me about this, is the filibuster. What the filibuster is the United States Senate has an internal rule, a House rule, a rule of that House of Congress that they have created that requires that any bill or any confirmation, anything, before they go to vote, has to go into a period of debate. And once it is in debate, in order to get it out of debate, cloture, C-L-O-T-U-R-E, cloture, C-L-O-T-U-R-E, cloture must be reached. Cloture for the U.S. Senate is 60 votes. Not quite 3/4, almost. 60 votes to get it out of cloture. Well, how do you keep it from getting a cloture? Well, you keep debating. And if you keep debating and you make people down and you're interfering with the Senate doing other things that they need to do too, because you're carrying it out and you're going to drag it out as long as you can, that's called a filibuster. And minority parties love the filibuster rule typically because it allows them to stop things that they couldn't stop with a vote by dragging it out, by filibustering. I remember one time Ted Cruz was filibustering, and just to make sure he still had things to say, he started reading Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss. He just kept on going for days at the podium. They couldn't hold the vote for cloture until he was willing to leave the podium. and they had other stuff they needed to do. And by the time he was ready to step down, they're like, all right, the time to vote is expired. We can't do this. The bill has died on the floor. It's a fantastic tool. Now, the Democrats recently have been trying to do whatever they can to kill that. It's called the nuclear option, to make sure that everything goes to majority vote and that cloture is not required. They have not achieved that vote yet because a handful of Democrats are not willing to vote for the nuclear option. It would make the Democrats look bad. It means that they want to push things through quickly, and that is the sign of tyranny. And they know that the American people see it that way. But anyway, so we get back to the point. So cloture, filibuster, that's not in the Constitution, is a rule created by the Senate, and they are allowed to do that by what I just read in the Constitution. Each house may determine the rules of its proceedings, punish its members for disorderly behavior. You can't be on a committee, or censure, C-E-N-S-U-R-E. It's not censor. People like to say censor. It's censure, C-E-N-S-U-R-E. It's a public humiliation, basically, is what censure is. And punish its members for disorderly behavior, and with the concurrence of 2/3, expel a member. So the House of Representatives, once someone gets in there, there's only 3 ways to get rid of them. They die or resign, I guess you could put that too. They get voted out after 2 years after they get voted in, or the House itself, with 2/3 vote, expels them.
So
what's that guy's name? Santos?
Yeah, I said that's coming into play right now. The Democrats are moving pretty hard to get rid of Santos. I hope they try to do it, because I want to hear the debate. Okay, yes, he lied, and to get in Congress, we should kick him out. Can we apply this equally throughout Congress? And we would now have a pro forma Congress, because there would not be.
Yeah, well, just about every single Democrat's guilty of worse, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, well, they just, look, the guy's obviously allergic to the truth in many ways, but he's hardly unique in that description if you look at the company he keeps.
Right. Yeah. Well, he's a New Yorker. Sorry for all of you in New York, but yeah, New York politicians, California politicians, those two right there lie more than any of them. And Chicago politicians. Maybe not the rest of Illinois, but Chicago for sure.
I'd say Delaware's got them all beat.
Yeah, but the thing is, here's the question, though. If the Delaware politician didn't realize he was lying when he lied, did he really lie? So it's like the tree in the forest, right? If it falls and nobody hears it, did it really make a noise? If he didn't realize he was lying because he's too brain dead to know, was he really lying?
Well, when you tell the same lie over and over again for about 40 years, he probably ought to be aware of it at some point.
Well, or he might just believe it. He might believe his own BS. Well, what we'll have to do is we'll have to make a phone call to Corn Pop and ask him. Maybe Corn Pop can help us out here.
There you go. No, Dan Bongino a couple weeks ago did about a 3-minute, just whole bunch of videos of Biden lies where he just made up things in his life that never happened and provably don't happen, and he keeps saying the same lies over and over again, no matter how many times he gets caught.
Right.
It's amazing that his staffers, he's on teleprompter 95% of the time, but every time he goes off script, he can't. His default is to go back and make up stories about his life. I mean, why do they let him do that? You've got to have better handlers than that. It's embarrassing.
Well, maybe his doppelganger is just saying things he thinks is true and it turns out to be a lie, but before they realize it, they can't stop it.
That's the one doppelganger theory that I might actually believe.
I know. That one I actually kind of do.
I can't explain the earlobes and the other facial tics. I've seen too many of those.
I've heard some people say that it was because he had a facelift, and that's common with a facelift. But I mean, I
think if you do the time lapse, you see that they're intermixed over the course of time. It doesn't seem like it's a consistent thing.
Right. All right, audience, let's move on. Article 1, Section 5. Each house shall keep a journal of its proceedings and from time to time publish the same. Transparency? Nah. Yeah, transparency. So each house shall keep a journal of its proceeds from time to time, publish the same, excepting such parts as may in their judgment require secrecy. People say, well, gosh, they get to decide what they should keep secret? Well, if they're the only ones that's supposed to know what's secret, how would anybody else make that determination? And the yeas and nays of the members of either house on any question shall, at the desire of 1/5 of those present, be entered into the journal. In other words, in order to keep the vote out of it, it takes 4/5 of them to say, we don't want the vote in there. So it has to be pretty serious stuff for the votes not to be there. All it takes is 1/5 and the vote's there. So what it says, what it's doing is it's saying, yeah, their votes almost all the time are going to be in the journal. All of their votes are, for the most part, going to be transparent, but there may be times where 4/5, which is going to take both parties, is such a serious deal they don't want it out there. Neither house during the session of Congress shall, without the consent of the other, adjourn for more than 3 days. I mentioned that earlier. Nor to any other place than that in which the two houses shall be sitting. In other words, wherever they normally meet, in this case is Capitol Hill, halls of Congress, wherever it is they meet, that's where they got to meet. If they want to meet somewhere else, they say, no, we're going to hold a congressional session at New York Yankee Stadium. Well, they got to get permission from the other house to do that.
They need to ask the Senate for the House of Representatives to meet, and vice versa.
And vice versa, exactly.
So for let's say a train carrying toxic chemicals were to overturn near DC, that would never happen. But if it did, hypothetically, they could convene elsewhere if the other house gave them permission.
Be careful. The journalists are getting arrested for talking about these things.
How exactly is that permission extended or requested? Has it ever happened?
I don't know of an instance, except I believe there may have been a time during the early United States or during the War of 1812 if there was danger.
You would think, because they burned the Capitol, the Congress probably wasn't there at the time. So,
right.
Were they out of session, or were they able to legislate?
I don't recall the memory. I don't recall in my memory the details of that. I am actually researching, because I'm writing a U.S. history book, a lot of the stuff from that time period. So I'll probably have that answer for you in about 5 or 6 weeks, because that's when I expect to be researching that part of history again.
Yeah, let me know. I'll be interested in that one.
Yeah. I'm doing a deep dive into history, pulling out some of my old notes, some old books that I have. That's one of the reasons why I like coming up here too. Is sometimes I realize I have some of my older books up here. I need to take them home, so I need them for reference resources, because I can't trust anything newer for the most part. And so, like the history books I'm using, one of them, I'm not kidding, for the early American history. I have a history book that was published in 1801. I have another one that was published in 1913, a few others, and a couple of others in the 1800s. So that's where I'm getting a lot of my resources for what I'm doing with my U.S. history book. I'm not trusting the modern stuff. Now, when I get into more modern history, then I'll have to go into what I know and do some heavy research. But I am getting into that stuff right now. So I'm going through all the Civil War. Geez Louise. First of all, it's not a Civil War. Revolutionary War battles. There's like 70, almost 80 battles that I'm writing about in my book. And I've gotten through about 30 or 33 of them so far. So that's an interesting story. I mean, I've known the Revolutionary War, but I've not gotten as deep into the battles as before as I am now. And I'm really getting a kick out of it. I'm finding out some stuff I didn't realize that's kind of caught my attention. And man, going through this stuff, how many times we got really close to just the war being done and the revolution being over and independence movement ending. How many times it got so close. God's hand was on it, no doubt in my mind. All right, Article 1, Section 6. Article 1, Section 6 of the United States Constitution. The senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law. Ascertained by law means it has to be approved by both houses and signed by the president. So they can determine what their compensation is going to be. They determine it, but it must be signed by the president, so it must go through the whole process. The 27th Amendment, though, which was a part of the original Bill of Rights, does not allow them to give themselves an immediate raise. The raise doesn't take place until the next session of the House of Representatives after an election goes into session. So every 2 years when we have that election, the following January, that's when the raise would go into effect. And paid out of the Treasury of the United States. Somebody has told me that they think they shouldn't be paid out of the Treasury, that the states, since they're representing the states in the federal government, should have to pay for their compensation. I think it was my friend Bo that said that. What do you think about that one, gentlemen? That we ought to have a constitutional amendment that changes the Constitution, that makes it so that the knuckleheads in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate do not get paid from the U.S. Treasury, but get paid by the states.
We've had this conversation before. I think I was part of it the last time we went through this in one of the other classes. So I'm not going to give away the obvious answers, but I'll let Ron play around with it a bit.
That's an interesting thought, actually.
Who are you?
Well, I mean, what
that would do is that would put that would reduce how much they get paid, right?
Yeah, the states funded the federal government to begin with.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
So, well, when I look back at the vast majority of our ills began with the Federal Reserve, because essentially it reversed the flow of money, thus making the central government the authority by virtue of monies.
And the thing is too is you're with the Federal Reserve, you're allowing international bankers to get involved in our system. And like I explained to people when I talk about Article 1, Section 8, where it says Congress shall have the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof, people says, well, I don't trust Congress. I said, well, yeah, but think about it. If Congress is coining money, who is not coining money? The banks. So it's actually a better system. But
Ron, are you generally speaking more loyal to your employer or to other businesses? Probably your employer, right?
Probably my employer, yeah.
Well, there you go.
So then what happens is if Congress is coining the money, then paying these representatives out of the Treasury wouldn't be as big of a deal. But because we've got this outside entities in control of the money system, then it would seem reasonable then to take that payment of the compensation to the state level. That's my thinking anyway.
I agree.
All right. Let's continue. They shall in all cases except treason, felony, and breach of the peace be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses and in going to and returning from the same. So this is the part of the Constitution that makes these people think they're above the law. And there is a reason it's in there. People get really upset when I go over this and say, well, why would the founders do that? One of the things that was going on in the political scene back then is, hey, man, we need every vote we can get to get this. If we can have such and such arrested before he gets Congress and he can't vote for it against us, we'll be able to get it through. They were playing those. So this was a protection against those kinds of shenanigans. The problem is the protection then created another shenanigan.
What's that?
Well, that these people think they're above the law and they can do whatever they want. They can't be arrested and blah, 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 blah. And now here's the thing, though. Read it carefully. They're privileged from arrest during their attendance of session of their prospective houses and going to or returning from the same. That doesn't mean they can't be arrested while they're in their apartment. They can't be arrested while they're in their district visiting them from Washington, D.C. or something like that. So if they are guilty of something, they need to be arrested.
Amen.
And for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. That is designed to make sure they're able to speak openly on the floor of Congress without being at risk of getting in trouble because they said something that wasn't, whatever. It allows them to speak freely while they're on the floor without being worried about being questioned. In other words, being slander, libel, list goes on. All right. No senator or representative shall during the time. Now, okay, let me stop here for a second. This is so important and it is so abused. And there's a recent example. Okay, now listen carefully to what we're reading here. No senator or representative shall, during the time for which he was elected, be appointed to any civil office under the authority of the United States, which shall have been created, or the emoluments whereof shall have been increased during such time. So what it's saying is, if a federal office is created or receives a raise in pay while a critter is holding office in the House or Senate, they don't even have to vote for it. They could have been gone the day it was voted for. It doesn't matter. If they are holding office in the Senate or the House on the day that an office is created or gets a raise in salary, emolument, they are ineligible from holding that office. Now, let's tell you a little story about a little old gal named Hillary. Hillary was a United States senator when the pay for the Secretary of State went to the floor. Not only was she a member of the Senate when the pay was increased for the Secretary of State, she actually was there to vote for it, which made her ineligible for the office of Secretary of State. Lo and behold, Barack Obama becomes president. Who does he tap for Secretary of State? Hillary Rodham Clinton. She's not eligible, screams somebody. That's okay. We can fix it because we have something very special. This little rabbit in our magic cap. Let's pull the rabbit out. What does the rabbit say? Oh, it's the Saxby fix. S-A-X-B-E, if you want to look it up. S-A-X-B-E. Some people spell it with a Y on the end, but it's actually technically with an E. Saxby fix is named after a person that they did it for when Nixon was first becoming president, one of his appointments. It was also used, but it wasn't called the Saxby fix yet, all the way back to the Woodrow Wilson presidency. What it does, what the Saxby fix does, says, oh gosh, Hillary, you're ineligible because you were in Congress when the emolument was raised in pay, so therefore we'll just go back in time and make it as if that never happened. So we're going to reduce the emoluments for that position back to what it was before that raise so that you can have it. That way it's as if you were as if they never got the raise and therefore you're eligible. Except that's not what the Constitution says. It says that if you're in office at the time it's raised, whether or not it gets knocked back down later is not indicated here. Was the emolument raised at the time that she was holding office in the United States Senate? Absolutely. Then she wasn't eligible, period. But see, these people, because they getting back to that above the law thing, think they're so above the law and they can interpret and they can twist it and they can mold the Play-Doh of the Constitution the way they want so that they could do whatever they want. Don't worry, it's constitutional because they said so. Because they interpreted it to be.
So
because they deemed it to be. Yeah.
There is a similar case going on in New Mexico right now. You may have heard about Alec Baldwin shooting one of the people on his set.
Right.
That state's set to go to trial in New Mexico. For whatever reason, they decided they had to appoint a special prosecutor, not someone out of the district attorney's office. They picked a woman who's a Republican state legislator, and she's got all the qualifications in the world. Seems like a pretty decent person. However, the New Mexico state constitution says bans you participating in a role of more than one of the three branches of government. She's a member of the legislature. She cannot participate in the prosecution. Alec Baldwin's attorneys, the thing would have gone to trial next week, is appealing, saying she can't be the prosecuting attorney, and they are correct. So the Baldwin trial is going to get delayed on a very similar issue.
Well, that clause in New Mexico state constitution is basically fashioned after what I'm getting ready to read next. And no person holding any office under the United States shall be a member of either house during his continuance in office. In other words, you can't be a member of the legislature and also hold a federal position or a federal paid position anywhere else. So, for example, what this is saying is that you can't be a member of one of the houses and then, I don't know, suddenly become a federal judge or a federal prosecutor, because that's a second office. You can't be paid for something else. You can only hold office in either house. You want to do something else with a federal pay involved, hold up office someplace else, then you have to resign your seat. So New Mexico, what you just mentioned, goes after what I just read in Article 1, Section 6 there at the end. I don't know if you knew I was getting ready to read that, but it was kind of interesting that you brought that up.
I remember the section because I've gone over it a few times with you, and that's what popped into my head when I was reading about the New Mexico case. So,
all right, very good. All right, we got 5 minutes left, and so let's start Article 1, Section 7, just the very first clause, and that's it. Because it's and you know, it's funny because that's how my book is marked. This is where we left off last time too. It took a whole show to go from my arrow to arrow, and that's exactly what I did this time. Same amount of time, and that's something. But anyway, Article 1, Section 7 is the section of the Constitution that goes over the process of making law. It explains all of the nuances. It explains how it happens. It explains the details. And before I start reading this next clause, I want to remind you, my faithful viewers and my fellow patriots, that we have two houses of Congress, and originally they were designed to be dissimilar from each other. In other words, unlike each other. Two heads are better than one, after all, and that doesn't mean two of the same head. Two different ways of looking at the laws that need to be proposed and voted on and approved, and, you know, suddenly Schoolhouse Rock comes to mind. I am only a bill, and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill. But anyway, so if a bill is going to become a law, it must be put through one house, then the next house has to vote on the same law, and then it goes to the president. If there's any changes, then it goes back and forth. There's committees, there's all that stuff, which we'll get into next week. But the houses are different. The House of Representatives, as today, has always been voted in democratically based on districts that are based on population. States with larger populations have more representatives. But in the U.S. Senate, before 1913, before the 17th Amendment, this U.S. Senate was different. The U.S. Senate was 2 per state. Population is not involved. There's no districts. The senators represent the whole state. And they were appointed by the state legislatures. What this did is this enabled the minority faction, the rural areas, the farmers, and so on and so forth, to have a little bit of a stronger voice in the system. Give the cities the House, give the rural areas the Senate. Now you got different factions. Then it's a natural check against each other. So, in the Declaration of Independence, it says that one of the important parts of government is a consent of the governed. And people believe that consent of the governed, and this is partially true, means that we give our consent for the laws that go into place, for the people who are going to serve. We put them in place directly or indirectly. They represent us, and the laws are put in place that we give our consent, that we will follow them as they are written, that we're going to follow the rules for the sake of an orderly society. That's consent to the governed. But what's the ultimate consent to the governed? The ultimate consent of anything is always money. Who's going to pay for it, and who's going to decide if it can be paid for? All bills for raising revenue shall originate in the House of Representatives, but the Senate may propose or concur with amendments as on other bills. In other words, if revenue is going to be affected, and basically any bill that affects money, federal spending, federal taxation, all of that, must start in the House of Representatives. If it's starting in the House of Representatives, what does that mean from the point of view of the founders? That the people, through their representation in the House, has the power of the purse strings. You don't like the war? Defund it. No more war. Don't like that activity by the federal government or that activity? Defund it. Don't put it in the budget. No money, no activity. Well, gosh, Doug, government shutdown. Yes, the founding fathers would love government shutdowns, if you ever wondered what they would think about it, because that was the whole point.
Well,
shut it down if we don't like it.
Now what we have is we have the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is a scam. They're
Oh, yeah,
always going to
absolutely.
raise the debt ceiling because they have no alternative but to raise the debt ceiling. Because when you print a certain amount of money, you have to print more. You can't. There's no way that you cannot raise the debt ceiling. The debt ceiling is a political tool. It's
Sure it is.
theater for the people. It's always going to be raised.
Oh, and
100% of the time.
and this is why the Federal Reserve, the 16th Amendment, 17th Amendment are so damaging. If we went back to the process of the states approving the money going to the federal government, which means they're basically going to say, yeah, we don't like that spending, you can't do it. And if we went back to the Senate representing the rural areas so they can say, hey, that law is not good for the states, and I lose my position if I tick off the state legislature, I'm voting no. And if we had the Congress coining the money instead of a bunch of international bankers putting the money into the system and regulating the value thereof, it'd be a whole different system. And you know what? This wouldn't be a concern.
Hey, Ron,
Yeah.
you want to remind me which house initiated the Obamacare bill?
Oh, yeah. That was actually the one that ultimately became the law was originated in the Senate. Therefore, they and that they argued that it was a tax. Well,
Yeah, but they used the Saxby fix kind of method to fix that. Of course, is they took a House bill, they stripped it of all this language, put their language in it, and they said, "Hey, look, it started in the House. It's got a House number."
Yeah, that's bullshit.
That's what they did, though. That way, they wouldn't violate that clause.
Yeah, what's the point of
Because
that?
because it does allow them to make amendments, and their amendment was to strip the entire language of the bill and put in their own. So yes, it was a Senate bill originally, but they pulled a Saxby fix kind of BS move, where we'll just we'll do this and do this. That way, technically, yeah. They like to go against us on technicalities in the courts. When are we going to start throwing them out on technicalities that they are violating in office? Anyway, all right. So when we come back next week, Article 1, Section 7 will be continued, and we'll go through the details of how a bill becomes a law. But then I have a feeling we'll finish that, and we'll also get into Article 1, Section 8. You know what the Article 1, Section 8 begins with, right? Two things that I can't wait to talk to you guys about: taxation and the General Welfare Clause.
Huh.
You want some homework, everybody? All right, tell you what, to get ready for the General Welfare Clause, here's your homework. Read the 1817 James Madison veto of the bonus bill. Look it up. Bonus bill, 1817, James Madison vetoed it. And he gives his reason for his veto in it. Among the arguments by Congress that it was constitutional was, the General Welfare Clause. And Madison writes, that's not what we meant. And then he explains. Read the 1817 veto by James Madison of the bonus bill. That's a public works bill, federal public works bill, for canals and roadways and highways and byways and seaways and rivers and lakes and all that jazz, that federal money should be used to build all that and pay for it. And he vetoed it.
Yeah, what would Madison know about what they actually meant in Philadelphia?
Your sarcasm precedes you, sir. Father of the Constitution, you mean that guy? The guy who took better notes than everybody? Although he'll argue Jackson took slightly better notes, and that's why he adjusted his after he read Jackson's. Jackson being the secretary. Not to be confused with James Jackson of Georgia, who I absolutely loved as a Congress critter. But anyway.
Who was the guy who that he took over for Cynthia McKinney? He was the one who said that if you got too many people on one side of the island of Guam, it would capsize.
Oh, that's
Conyers, or was his name? No.
Yeah, Hank some or other.
I know who you're talking about.
It's Hank Johnson.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just worried if we get too many people on one side of the island, it might.
All right, everybody. So I have 6 classes in Southern California I teach every week, but this week none of them are being taught. Oh, wait, that's not totally true. I did not show up for Chino last night. I sent out an email and I indicated this on Sunday, or this morning. This morning, Fallbrook typically. Tonight, Capistrano typically. Not going to be there. No class. Tomorrow, Murrieta, typically, no class. Thursday, though, is interesting. I have 3 substitutes on Thursday. Normally on Thursday, I've got Beaumont, my homeschool high schoolers, and Carlsbad. So in Beaumont, if you live in Beaumont, you want to go to that class still, Alan Myers will be doing the 4th week of the monetary system. Yeah, I'm trying to, the proper way to really say is monetary system education. But yeah, Fed Ed, which basically talks about monetary system and Federal Reserve and how to take the heartbeats from the Federal Reserve, as he likes to put it, from the Hydra. So that is Thursday morning, 10 o'clock up in Beaumont at the Presbyterian Church on Euclid and 7th. Then my homeschool kids, they're taking a test. I made up their test. It'll be given by my assistant, but also Alan on his way down for Beaumont is going to then visit the kids there at the homeschool, my homeschool class, to give them the 5 Women of the Constitution presentation also. And then Thursday night, Carlsbad class, they're off of Marin Road, right off of Jefferson and the 78, if you know the area, 6 o'clock. The War Hamster, we'll be talking a little bit about, what is the CIA, right?
Yeah, I think the name of the lecture is going to be The Rise of the Fourth Reich, and it's about the real history and formation of the CIA. And it's going to be a fun one. I've done my homework, and I am looking forward to it.
I always thought the CIA was the Consortium Infiltration Agency, but then again, you know.
Did you see that Feinstein is not going to run for re-election in 24?
Well, I think we already
yeah.
knew that.
Yeah. And who was it that was wanting that seat again?
Adam Schiff is in there, but so is also what is it, Jody? Gosh, what is her name? I just had it on the tip of my tongue.
Well, Adam Schiff, I knew was wanting to position himself for it, but
he's going to be up for a pretty big primary fight because she's got the Elizabeth Warren wing of the Democratic Party behind her, and that carries a lot of pull in California. So that's going to be a fun Democrat primary fight. What is her name? It's Jody. Gosh darn it! I was talking about her this morning. Anyways, it's it's not Nancy. I'm sorry, Dianne Feinstein announcing she's not going to run again wasn't exactly a big shocker because these people had already said they're running. So it's like we kind of already knew that. But that is going to be fun. I will be enjoying that primary.
All right, so good to see you guys. I am ready to go back and hang out with my wife in the living room. She's watching, I think, some movies right now. I got tons of DVDs up here. Let me hat straight here.
The name is Katie Porter. Hey, Smirk, thanks for that. Katie Porter is running against Adam Schiff. Go, Katie. Well, the good news is one of the two is going to be out of Congress, which is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, amen to that. Guys, right, I will see you next week.
Yeah, hey, good to see you guys. Appreciate you. Enjoyed the time. Thank you for doing this. Fortunately, I've got a great earpiece that makes sure the audio came out really good now. I'm not speaking into my phone mic. I've got this great earpiece that I'm using, and it's a pleasure being here and hanging out with you guys. I appreciate all you do. And technology it used to be whenever I'd come up here, I'd just be screwed. But technology is such that we can pull this off. I got one more thing to show you, though. It's a 1940s tractor.
Interesting.
Yeah, I've got some interesting stuff up here. But anyway, all right. Thank you for hanging with me. I always enjoy this. We got the lawmaking process next week, and I'll be back in town. I'll be home, and I get to shower tonight. I'm all excited. My friend did show. I noticed he drove up to grab the pipe pieces that I had bought, and so Mrs. Constitution, better known as Virginia, gave him the pieces. So we're gonna have water. For those of you who missed the beginning, Virginia. Virginia. Yeah, my wife, Virginia, of 38. My wife of 38 years. Sometimes we we have deer. I haven't seen any deer since we've been up here, but we've been getting a lot of elk. I usually don't get very many elk on the property, and they've been all over the place. I've had to keep the dogs from going outside because one of them, we took the dogs up here with us, and one of them likes to chase the critters.
I have to go. You guys enjoy.
All right.
I'll let you sign off.
No,
right.
I'm out of here. Good to see you guys. Hey, Brady, good to see you, brother. We'll talk later also. Audience, good to see you. I'm up in paradise. I'll be back next week at home again. But until then, united we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. Thank you
Cheers.
for watching.